From the heroic voyage of Christopher Columbus to the present day, the history of the United States is rich in events, most of them tragic. The first victims of the colonizers were the native Indians who inhabited the continent. Then there was the long period of slavery, later replaced by terrorist attacks, contract killings, and natural disasters. But even after all these years, rumors and speculation are still rife about a tragedy in the United States because no one has ever found out who really killed John F. Kennedy.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route.
Today, we're going to tell you in detail about what happened, share all the up-to-date data about the crime investigation, and try to tell you honestly what really happened there. So make yourselves comfortable, and here we go.
Who killed John F. Kennedy?
John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, was shot and killed in Dallas on November 22, 1963, as he was riding in a convertible with his wife Jacqueline and Governor John Connally of Texas. The shots were officially fired by former Marine veteran Lee Harvey Oswald, who was killed 2 days after the incident.
He's been shot. He's been shot. Lee Oswald has been shot.
A week after Kennedy's assassination, the incoming President Lyndon Johnson created a commission of inquiry headed by Chief Justice Earl Warren. His report, issued 10 months later in 1964, stated that Kennedy had been shot from a 6th-floor window near the southeast corner of the Texas School Book Depository building. No evidence was provided that Oswald was involved in any domestic or international conspiracy against Kennedy. The investigation by other government commissions found no evidence that the CIA or other intelligence agencies were involved in the Kennedy assassination. But why then are so many conspiracy theories built around the assassination? According to the commission, Oswald, while on the 6th floor of the school book depository, fired 3 shots, one of which failed to reach the target. This was confirmed inter alia by the fact that 3 shell casings were found at the location from which Oswald allegedly fired, and that the shots, according to the examination, had been fired from a Carcano M9138 carbine found there. According to the report, the bullet that wounded Kennedy in the back went out through the neck and wounded Governor Connally. The bullet fired by the sniper from behind and to the right of Kennedy could have gone through the president and wounded the governor in front of him, because Kennedy, who was cheering the crowd, had moved to the very edge of the limousine when he was shot, and the extra seat in which Connally was sitting was already lower than the main seats and moved to the center of the car. In addition, ballistics experts determined that the bullet that wounded the governor lost a lot of velocity at the time of impact, which was most likely caused by passing through the body tissues of another person. Since the design of the car is unusual for ordinary people accustomed to having all the seats exactly behind each other and at the same height, this conclusion was repeatedly criticized in the yellow press. The zigzag trajectory of the bullet was incredible, so the ironic term magic bullet arose among opponents of the official theory of the Kennedy assassination. Or maybe there was more than one shooter. That would easily explain the strange trajectory of the bullets, since they were fired by different people from different directions. This question is the cornerstone of the whole assassination attempt, for so far no one knows the exact answer. Most conspiracy theories include the claim that it was not just Oswald who shot Kennedy. The second shooter theory is closely related to the problem of the so-called magic bullet. If we assume that the same bullet could not have wounded Kennedy, changed its trajectory, and wounded Connally, and that Oswald, as experts have determined, did not have time to fire more than 3 shots, then the only possible explanation would be that there was at least one other shooter who owned the missing shot. Another argument is that there were allegedly more metal particles in Connally's body than a single bullet could have left behind. However, this argument has been refuted. In reality, all the particles found could well belong to a single bullet. At some moment, the experts were at a standstill at all, trying to understand from which side the shots were fired. The wound of the president with the first shot was assessed by the doctors in Dallas as a wound in the throat with an exit in the back. This is indirectly confirmed by the absence of bullet particles in the throat. and their presence on the clothing in the area of the back. In addition, it is difficult to explain the wound channel, where the wound in the back is lower than the wound in the throat, if the shot was made from behind from a great height. On this basis, the Soviet emigrant writer Igor Yefimov put forward the theory that not only the third, but also the first shot was fired from the front, and that the wound in the throat was an entry wound. Oswald, on the other hand, fired only one shot from the book depository building, the one that wounded Governor Connolly. All of the governor's wounds are consistent with a shot fired from above, from behind. The official autopsy report on the president's body treats the first wound as the result of a shot from above, from behind, with an entry wound in the back and an exit wound in the throat. In addition, it is this bullet that is believed to be the magic bullet that also inflicted all of Governor Connolly's wounds. The third shot throws the president's head sharply backward, which may also serve as circumstantial evidence that the bullet came from the front. We know from recorded police radio conversations that the county sheriff sent his officers to the railroad crossing and other elevations that were in front of the president's car at the time of the shooting in the first minutes after the shot. The search of the book depository building, where the Oswald rifle was later found on the 6th floor, began later, 40 minutes after the shooting, before the building was even cordoned off. Eyewitnesses who were in the path of the presidential motorcade when the shooting began gave conflicting accounts of where the fire was coming from. The U.S. House of Representatives Homicide Committee report cited the following data. 49 people heard shots from the side of the book depository, 21 people from the side of the grassy knoll, and 4 people testified that shots were fired from 2 locations. Richard Sprague, comparing all available photos and film footage from the scene, found evidence of 6 shots fired from 3 different directions. From behind the hedge on the grassy knoll behind the colonnade, from the 2nd floor of the Dallas, Texas building, and from the 6th floor of the book depository building on its west corner. Kennedy was thus hit by 4 bullets. The 3rd shot wounded Connolly. There was also a 4th shooter at the south end of the Sprague colonnade who did not fire a single shot. In the man in the crowd who was strangely manipulating an umbrella, Sprague assumed the conductor of the operation. Sprague estimated the number of direct participants in the assassination attempt alone could have been as many as 50. Many conspiracy theorists and historians also link the assassination to various opponents of American power. So, for example, with the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the USSR is often mentioned nearby. According to declassified documents, Lee Harvey Oswald came to Moscow in October 1959. He obtained a visa in Finland, where he came on a student visa issued on fictitious documents. In Moscow, he checked into the Hotel Berlin and through his guide declared his desire to remain in the USSR and obtain citizenship. CSS officers had a lengthy conversation with him, but denied him citizenship. Having been refused, Oswald returned to the hotel where he attempted suicide, after which he was admitted to the Botkin Hospital. On October 31, 1959, he renounced his American citizenship at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. In January of the 60s, Oswald received papers for statelessness and offers from the Soviet authorities to move to Minsk. He lived in Minsk for the next 2 years, working as a turner in a radio factory. He married in Minsk. He had a daughter, June, with Marina Prusakova, but Oswald became disillusioned with the Soviet way of life at the beginning of 1961. In his diary entries, he complained about the lack of entertainment and travel opportunities. In February of that year, Oswald contacted the U.S. Embassy to ask for help in returning home. On June 1, 1961, Oswald and his family returned to the United States. Could this scene have been an imitation of a secret conspiracy with the Soviets against the U.S. government?
This video is brought to you by Thorum. Take a look at this rings. They have rings made from 4 billion-year-old Gibeon meteorite and genuine 65 million-year-old T-Rex bone. If you are a fan of Vikings, they have Odin ring, the Norse god of war, the Thor ring, and all of them are crafted by hand. Head the link in the comments and use promo code LIVINGHISTORY to get 20% off a truly unique ring.
At this point, there is no direct evidence that the CSS was involved in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. There has also long been talk about the involvement of the Cuban government in these events. In the early 60s, the CIA repeatedly conducted operations to eliminate political figures abroad, among which are several attempts to overthrow Fidel Castro. For example, in the 61st year, a failed CIA operation took place in the Bay of Pigs. The operation involved a landing of Cuban immigrants who had been trained in CIA centers. Due to inadequate training of the landing troops, Cuban government troops defeated the immigrant formation in a matter of days. In the investigation by the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Assassinations, much attention was given to the fact that even before the Kennedy assassination, as early as December 1960, the CIA had a dossier on Oswald. However, according to the report, there was no evidence that Oswald had any ties to the CIA. Revenge for the Bay of Pigs debacle might also have been a motive for the assassination of CIA-affiliated Cuban immigrants who hoped to overthrow the Castro regime. It is known that at the time of the assassination attempt, the president was extremely unpopular with them. We will talk more about the declassified documents related to the Kennedy assassination a little later. But in addition to these, entire archives concerning the assassination attempts on the Cuban leaders have been released online. The documents declassified on the 25th of October shed light on one such attempt that was discussed 6 months after President Kennedy's assassination. An assassination plan prepared in July 1964, the FBI described negotiations with Cuban émigrés ready to return to the island and kill the leaders of the revolution. The price for Fidel's head was supposed to be about $800,000 at today's prices. Subsequently, the price for the head of the leader of the Cuban Revolution was deliberately reduced by a factor of $5 million. One of the documents dating back to 1975 is another plan to overthrow the communist government in Cuba. Among the options considered were a military invasion, the use of gangsters, mercenaries, as well as a draft of Operation Reward. According to this operation, it was planned to scatter flyers over the entire island with rewards for killing politicians and officials. For example, for the murder of any leader of a party cell, the reward would have been $10,000 to $40,000. For a government official, it would be up to $100,000. The murder of Fidel Castro was estimated at only 2 cents. According to a 1975 U.S. Senate report, this was intended to humiliate the Cuban leader himself. Why are these documents important? Because they directly prove that the Cubans had motives for the assassination of John F. Kennedy. But after the tragic assassination, the U.S. Secret Service did not stop working on the attempt on Fidel Castro's life. The Cubans have not responded in any way, so we would not link them to the Kennedy assassination attempt. On December 15, 21, the U.S. released new data on the JFK assassination investigation. Nearly 1,500 previously classified documents have been published on the U.S. National Archives and Records Administration website. All of them are available to view and download. In one of the documents, the CIA parses Robert Anson's 1976 book about Lee Harvey Oswald's trip to Moscow, officially considered a lone assassin, and Oswald's trip to the Cuban and Soviet embassies. The telegram describes how Oswald called the Soviet embassy while in Mexico City to request a visa to visit the Soviet Union. More than a month before the assassination, Oswald, according to the documents, had gone back to the United States through a checkpoint on the Texas border. Another memo, dated the day after Kennedy's assassination, says that according to an intercepted telephone conversation in Mexico City, Oswald had spoken to a CSS officer at the Soviet embassy in September of that year. After Kennedy was assassinated, Mexican authorities arrested the Mexican officer at the Cuban embassy with whom Oswald was communicating, who said Oswald was posing as a communist and Fidel Castro admirer, documents show. The new files include several FBI reports on the Bureau's efforts to investigate and track down major American mafia figures such as Santo Trafficante Jr. and Sam Giancana, who are often cited in conspiracy theories about the Kennedy assassination. Some strange phone call to a reporter also came to light. 4 days after the president's assassination on November 26th, an agent reported to FBI Director Edgar Hoover that he had learned from the CIA's London residence that the senior Cambridge News reporter in Britain had received an anonymous call 25 minutes before the November 22nd Kennedy assassination attempt. The unidentified man advised the reporter to call the U.S. Embassy for some big news and hung up, according to the report. Sometime later, when the Dallas shooting became known, the reporter called local police, who passed the message on to British intelligence. A law passed in 1992 under which documents about the Kennedy assassination were disclosed, stipulated that they must all be made public within 25 years, that is, by October 2017. However, Presidents Donald Trump and Joe Biden have repeatedly postponed the deadline. In 2017, for example, just a few minutes before the official publication, it became known that 300 documents would not be made public. This was reported by Donald Trump himself, who said that he had been asked to do so by the intelligence services. Thus, every year, more and more evidence emerges that Oswald was not the only shooter, and that there is more behind the assassination attempt than the Warren Commission presented. But the real truth will not be known for some time, not until all the details of the investigation are made public. See you again, friends.